Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another video webcast. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about the movie that we watched in class, A Place in the City, which takes place in South Africa. It's about the Abu Shlabi movement, which is the movement of shack dwellers that is occurring within South Africa. This movement is going on, right now. It stems from, post-apartheid with the redistribution of land. It was a short movie. It was about 30 minutes long. We watched it on YouTube, so anyone can pull it up. So ultimately, I thought it was a very good movie. It definitely did a very good job of portraying the problems that are endemic within the shack settlements. It highlighted the inequalities that are going on in South Africa and how the government has failed to live up to their promises and to provide basic constitutional rights. It also highlighted some of the injustices put forth by the government and how the government is fighting back against this movement. Finally, we're going to talk about what this movement means for South Africa and post-apartheid. So let's get started. Now, I apologize if you hear any screaming in the background. All the freshmen got back tonight, so they're all a little rowdy, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so go with the basics. Post-apartheid, the new constitution was adopted, which promised basic human rights, which included free access to housing and electricity for everyone. So post-apartheid occurred, and housing was no longer segregated. So people started moving towards the cities, which had the jobs. However, the government was not able to provide all the housing requirements that were necessary in such a short period of time. As a result, shack settlements propped up around cities. It is cheaper for people, to live in these shacks than it would be to live outside of the city, and so forth, and it allowed people to have access to work. Most of the shack dwellers represent migrant labor, kind of the unofficial workforce, if you will. Clearly they are a minority group, but they contribute a lot to the economy. So the government has attempted to force the shack dwellers to move. They've attempted to shut down the shack settlements, and they've tried to provide housing. The problem is there's a lot of problems with the housing that is built. The government hasn't taken into account the location of the settlements. So, for instance, they will build new houses 26 kilometers away, which it's actually more expensive for someone to commute to work than it would be to live in the shacks. As a result, it makes the housing untenable and unfeasible, so people continue to live in the shack settlements. I feel like, before we continue to keep going, it's important to give listeners an idea of what these shacks are, and it is a shack, a shanty town. The houses are made up of very poorly constructed material, just thrown together. Everything is, flammable. In the movie, it highlighted the fact that one of the shacks burned down overnight, which just shows the danger that is occurring within these regions, or within these settlements. Excuse me. Another problem with the shack settlements is the basic sanitation. Extremely lacking. Water is non-existent. Electricity is actually being shut off from these shack settlements because the government's trying to force people to move out. Even though these are all promised by the basic constitutions, it's making life more and more difficult for people. In fact, one of the top killers of children in South Africa is diarrhea, and that's due to the poor water that is present, and There's no basic sanitation, so any waste is just put right into the water supply. There are no clean toilets. It's pretty it's a pretty deplorable place to live, and this video did a very good job of highlighting the problems that are occurring in these areas. So, the reason the government wants people to move out is because they are unsightly. They no one likes looking at shanty towns. I'm sure the people who live in the shanty towns don't want to live there, but they have to due to economic reasons. But B, it's a deterrent to tourism. So this video looks at Durban, which was the site of two major World Cup construction projects. Multi-billion-dollar stadiums were erected in eyesight of these shanty towns, and the Ministry of Tourism was afraid that the shanty towns would, I guess, prevent or reduce tourism in the area, and that people would not come and spend money. Anyway, so there's really been a push to close down these shanty towns, and the government has adopted policies of basically trying to force people out of their homes, and trying to make living in shanty towns untenable. So as I said earlier, the government is building houses as part of the constitutional mandate to provide housing for everyone. However, they're not really taking into consideration the needs of the population, which is key. Any sort of communication between people living in the shanty towns and the government would show that people need a place to live within easy access of where they work. So you can walk to work or for free, or the people can move into these houses but have to pay money to get to work, and this money is often more than they would make at their job, because public transportation is not subsidized. So as a result, people end up staying where they're at, even though they have access to these houses. So, one thing the movie doesn't exactly cover, but one of the ways to get around this is to easily the government could subsidize public transportation, which would allow for people to move into the new houses and have access to and from their work at a price that would be comparable to living in the shanty towns. Another problem is some of the houses are poorly constructed. The shanty towns themselves are built on hills, which are susceptible to mudslides and the likes, and the new houses are basically constructed in a way in which they take no regard to any type of building code. They're not safe. There have been instances where the entire house is because they were poorly constructed, slid off the hill, and people have died. So they're just as dangerous. I guess it should be noted that when I say free housing, we're not talking, suburban style homes that you would see in the gated community, but they're basically four walls and a roof and a concrete slab on the ground. But then again, it's better than the shanty towns. So, this highlights some of the inequalities within South Africa, where you have the suburban flight into gated communities where the money is, and then you have the rest of the population living in abject poverty. And the government is trying to protect the rights of the white rights and beliefs of the suburban elite, and they're doing this at an expense of providing basic necessities to the poor of the population. So it highlights a lot of these problems. So now we'll get into the readings, which the reading was by Gibson, which talks about critical black consciousness, and you can really extrapolate a lot of that into a lot of the notions into what is going on in South Africa. So, the concept of black consciousness is that that during apartheid, everyone was equal. There was no class difference. Everyone was forced outside the towns. As a result, all black South Africans had a consciousness of inequality. They recognized what was going on. They came together as a group of people in protest against apartheid policies. And while this struggle was slow to begin with, that eventually led to the downfall of apartheid. So the Abu Shlabi movement has a lot of characteristics of critical black consciousness that is occurring. You can look at the fact that they recognize that they're in shanty towns, but they're not illiterate. They know, how to make a movement and how to, gain support and take their demands to the government. They have a critical consciousness of who they are and what they want as a group of people, which is key, to articulating their demands. They, black consciousness says that, they have to come and recognize, themselves as a group of people, and the Abu Shlabi movement is doing that. They clearly make themselves visible. There is a solidarity amongst the shack dwellers that they want their demands met, and this solidarity is key to their consciousness. As a result, they have been viewed as a threat to the government because of what they represent. Earlier this week, an Abu Shlabi activist was actually killed in South Africa, so it demonstrates how this issue is pertinent today. So, the group has, come together. They have a website which you can't argue that what is occurring, that there is a separation, that these people are illiterate or incapable of bringing their plight to the greater world community. Clearly, that argument isn't valid. That people can get involved, around the world and help fight for the basic rights of people living in these settlements. So, overall it was a fantastic video. Short, but you could easily watch it. Highly recommend it because it highlights, not just the struggle for rights in South Africa, but you can also look at this as any sort of struggle. The same concepts occur from Bolivia and water wars to West Virginia to any movement of people trying to claim their basic rights. It all starts with a critical consciousness with a group of people and forming a movement based around recognizing that they are being exploited and that they want their demands met. So I hope you enjoy this. I think it was a very good movie, so hopefully you will take a chance and watch it. Again, A Place in the City, so just YouTube it. And I'll see you next week for the next installment. Have a great night and talk to you later. See ya.